Hey, Shanky, can you hear us? I can't see you. I just have a black screen with Shanky written on it.
Yo! Hello.
Hi, mate. Where are you coming in from?
I'm in Milan, Italy.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
What time is it in Milan, Italy?
It's 3 a.m. in the morning.
You are amazing.
I was quite stroked, so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Oh, it's so great. Well, please meet Justin Jones, the incredible adventurer. I'm Seb. Hey, we've got a couple of people who've just joined, so we're going to welcome them. We've got Simon Craddock, and we've got Heather Porter. Hey,
Hello.
Heather.
Hello, Rambling Rover.
Yes.
Heather, you're friends with Jonesy, aren't you?
Yeah, we know of each other.
You know of each other. You know, Heather is actually a pretty amazing person in herself, having done a fairly long through hike yourself. Do you want to just mention what that's about, Heather?
Yeah, I can't believe it was so long ago. It was 2 years ago now, but I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 6-month hike from Mexico to Canada. It was just over 4,000 kilometres. So yeah, it was pretty epic.
Wow.
It was 177 days, which is 5.5 months.
How many miles?
2,600 miles, yeah.
So, hey, we can say hello to Karina from Brazil. Hi, Karina. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. Karina, do you want to share what your goal was? Because you did have an adventure that you wanted to talk about with Jonesy, right?
I'm not a adventurer, but I had 2 dreams, but I don't think if the first one is an adventure. So I have a dream that I would travel by car from New York to LA. And the other one is to spend a week in Atacama's desert.
Wow, the Atacama. Wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Crazy. So, have you set a timeline or when you roughly think you want to do this, or have you verbalized it to a bunch of other people?
So I verbalized it to my family about USA. Atacama's desert is something that I came up this year. My family they arranged my house with World's team, and then there was Atacama's desert, and I want to spend a week there, but I don't know where should I start.
I think the number one thing with starting, you've got the dream, you've got that idea. I think it's finding a tribe of people that can actually help you, or doing the research and verbalizing it. As soon as you put it out into the universe, what you plan to do, like you've said to your family, you want to go to America, you want to do that road trip right across, that's now out there. And Seb and I were just talking about the idea of having like a group of people that you're not necessarily accountable to, but they know your goals, and so they can ask you about it. So, I mean, now we all know about your dream to go across the Atacama Desert. We can ask you about it. We can send you messages on Facebook and go, hey, how's that going?
Karina, where is the Atacama Desert? I'm asking on behalf of a friend who doesn't know.
It is in Chile. I don't know how to say this.
Chile. Yeah. Beautiful.
Chile. Yeah.
Right. Well, we can get stuck into that as well. I just want to introduce Marty, who's just joined us.
Hello.
Hello, mate. Marty, you're in Scotland still, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we're still in the van, yeah.
So good. Marty, have you got a particular adventure in mind?
So I've got 3, but I think the third one might be a bit far-fetched. I don't know. So the first one is to cycle from Scotland all the way to Moscow and back. The second one is to get to the Amazon rainforest and then travel all the way around South America. And the last one is to explore Antarctica.
Well, Jonesy can talk very directly. Yeah, look at his and mine background, actually. That's Jonesy in Antarctica.
Oh, wow.
Well, Jonesy, we've got a couple of adventurous people here. Heather, I didn't ask you, actually. Have you got an adventure upcoming? You're obviously accomplished and doing your own thing as well. So anything in the mix that we're going to be talking about?
Yes and no. I was actually planning on going next year to the US and doing the Continental Divide Trail, which is a similarly lengthed and positioned hike, again, another 6-month trip. That's all changed now with COVID and but I actually have another one that's been kind of on the back burner for years, and that was to paddle the Cook Strait. And so I that's probably more relevant to this, because hiking and getting away to do that, see, I've done that before, so I think I'm pretty much across that one now. But this paddle trip never really got off the ground, so I think that'd be a good one for today.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, thank you everyone for turning up. Jonesy, thank you for being here to help. As you can see, all these adventures are so different to one another, but I would dare say that most of them can be broken down in the same sort of process, right, Jonesy?
Definitely.
And I've just got a question here on my phone from Todd, who I think you guys might all know. And I think it just might be a good starting point. And Jonesy, I'll ask you directly, and then maybe we can go into just naturally see how everyone else goes. Okay, so the question from Todd is, what if you have a solo adventure you want to go on, so you don't naturally have anyone to plan with? Who would you recommend talking to first to get the dream out there and to start planning? That might be a good one, because some of these adventures seem solo.
Yeah, and look, I think everyone will have a slightly different take on this. I think one of the best places to start is to find a group of people that's a relatively safe place to voice that idea. Because there's a certain vulnerability to having an idea, a dream, a passion for an adventure, that when you announce it to a group of people that can be detractors, it can make you stall on the idea of doing that, especially when you're solo. If you're doing a trip with multiple people, you've got them to back you up. So finding a group of people that will actually support you and will help you critically look at what you're actually meant to be doing is super important. I mean, I've done small things solo. I've always generally done trips with other people. So, I mean, that's an interesting question to actually reflect on. Heather, you were alone actually for your PCT trek, weren't you? Did you take the approach of, keeping all the cast to yourself, or to letting in a small group of people?
I definitely told a lot of people. I think when you're doing a trip like that, especially when it's solo, you become totally obsessed with it as you find the information and you do your research, and you really need that outlet of someone to talk to, and it needs to be that safe person that's sort of cheering you along the way. But you learn so much more about your trip and your plans when you actually vocalize it as well, rather than just reading about it and having someone, ask you questions, being like, I don't get that, can you explain it? And you find yourself almost explaining it to yourself as well. I actually reached out. I was lucky that the PCT is a really popular trail, and heaps of people done it in the past. So I got in touch with a few different people that had hiked it previously. I found that helped really well. And the other thing I did was actually go and do something on my own as well. I was so scared of being lonely. That was my biggest fear of the trip. And I just kind of had to take that one on head on and try and do some more stuff on my own just to get used to that idea in the first place.
Super good. And you can probably throw in anyone else who's got some experience in this, but one thing I found is when you're verbalizing a idea, a dream, a passion, you'll get a lot of people that support you, really do, and then you'll get some people that are trying to be detractors, some people that are trying to be naysayers, and they're actually quite a powerful group as well if you use them the right way, because there's two categories of naysayers, people that are going to be negative, and one is general group of people don't know anything about your trip. They're basically trying to troll you. Cut them out, use them as fire, use them as motivation to show them wrong. But there's another group of naysayers that might be very experienced in what you do. Might be, ocean meteorologists if you're going to go sail across the world, or might be another through hiker or another person who's done the PCT who might have some concerns. And those people that have the concerns and have the experience, they're people that you actually want to get on board to become part of your teams, because they've got a lot of the problems and solutions that you need the answers to. And if you can turn them from detractors into people that are going to be advocates, it is the most powerful thing. Seriously, it's so great for trip planning, especially if you're solo. I will mention, I did one thing, Karina, I think you saw it. I did post a little link in the thing of a girl that's actually currently walking the length of the world. She's walking from the bottom of South America all the way up to the top of Alaska. She's on year 3 of that trip, but she's crossed the Atacama Desert, and that's pretty fantastic, especially being a solo female adventurer doing a trip like that. Yeah, that's the answer to Toddy's question. Thanks, Toddy. Virtually,
he's got another one, but I'll ask that later. Jonesy, what's the first step for these for everyone? I've got an adventure, and ahead of me too. What you want to do. What's like a first planning step?
The very first step, I think, is to put yourself in the frame of mind, and you guys have already done this, but is to put yourself in the frame of mind where you give yourself permission to think about having an adventure. You know, you go, you know what, you're like, rather than be your first naysayer, your first person that says, no, I can't do this, give yourself permission to dream. So you guys have already taken that step, you've got an idea, and now for me, the general first step is one, you can announce that dream to other people and vocalize it, but for me, equally powerful is just start finding out about the journey, about the trip. So sit down, pad of paper, get a bottle of scotch open if you're over in Scotland, and crack a beer or have a glass of wine. It doesn't need to be alcohol, but sit down and just start writing out all the questions that you might have. You know, what's it like down in Antarctica? How cold is it going to get? What kind of conditions? What kind of time of year? What are the absolute extremes in temperature? You know, where could I go? How big is it? What's the access points? You write out these lists of all these questions, and then it's a matter about going out and finding the answers to it. Now, you can do a lot of this stuff in the early stages as research by yourself, but this is where it becomes apparent that there's other people that know that information so much better than you. And so you might as well not reinvent the wheel and find a team, a core group of people that can actually help you on this journey and this dream, this idea. But number one, start writing out questions. Start writing out questions that you've got, because once it's on paper, it becomes so much more real. And get creative with these things. Big bits of paper, colors. You know, make it fun. This is a fun process. I think it really is.
How do you break down a bigger goal into smaller, palatable chunks? Can you pick something which is smaller and then you just do that as a test? If you want to ride to Moscow and back, do you first ride the length of England or the width of Scotland? What is a micro-adventure? What can we be doing? How does that look? Is there a definition of what we can, and is something too small, or is everything kind of productive and helpful?
No, I don't think anything is too small. So the concept of a micro-adventure is generally a very small, short adventure you could go, basically, that doesn't you don't have to get a lot of funds for, you don't have to really think about too hard. You can generally do with a lot of the gear that you already have, and it's close to home. And so the pioneer of the micro-adventure movement was a guy called Alistair Humphreys. I will put a link up for him because he's utterly amazing. He's got some books on basically how to go on a micro-adventure, and also how to go on a big expedition as well. So great resources from him. Now, the micro-adventure is about going out there and just immersing, connecting to nature, connecting to the environment, connecting to yourself. And so they're micro doses of adventure. Now, if you're planning a big goal, micro-adventures are great, but it's better to make them specific towards that goal. So you work out, all right, I want to cycle from Scotland to Moscow. That's what I want to do. And so you break down the kind of what you need to be able to be capable of to do that trip. You know, I need to be able to be this strong a cyclist. I need to have this kind of equipment. I need to know that I've got all these systems sorted. And so then you design a series of little short tests that you can do. A 3-day cycle trip, you know, up to the Highlands of Scotland, because you're going to get some pretty interesting terrain like that. You're going to experience, I'm going to do it in winter as well, because I want to do it with some gnarly conditions that I might expect to get, you know, if I'm on a shoulder season in Siberia or wherever, you know. You design these little trips to test you, because each time you test yourself, you come back to the safety of your home and you're like, right, I pushed myself quite hard, but I ended up growing. So it's all about designing a critical path and working out those little trips you want to tick off on. For example, I mean, talking about kayaking for a second, the idea of paddling. So I paddled a kayak from Australia to New Zealand, and that was a pretty big trip. One of the big testing trips for me was to paddle across Bass Strait. Now, Bass Strait links Tasmania, which is an island off the bottom of Australia, to mainland Australia, which is a pretty notorious stretch of water. And, you know, that was a big sort of step mentally to know that if I could do that, then I was one big step closer to doing the Tasman Sea. Also highly recommend it. One of the best trips I've ever done in my life. The cool thing about Bass Strait is you can island hop your way down. And I just want to paint a picture for you. So it's about 350 kilometres, so bit over 200 and something miles, 230 miles or something like that. And you land on these islands along the way, and some of them are uninhabited. You land on them, the island might be like 500 meters long. There might be some cattle on it, a lot of penguins, and you feel like a king or a queen when this is your island for that night. And so you island hop across, and if the weather's really bad, you just sit and wait. You don't go out there and take risks in those kind of environments, because the sea state can get super rough. The worst it got on that trip was maybe we turned a corner to come around a point, And because of the waves and the currents and the wind, we had like 4.5 meter waves just picking up standing, and having to navigate that in a kayak was terrifying. That's why you want those skills in order to be able to get out of a situation like that.
For me to start my adventure was to mark the places on the Google Maps where I want to go and like track how I'm going to do it. So I did like basic planning, but still then I found out that, like, for instance, let's say I want to go to Dolomites, the mountain ranges. So I marked all the mountains specifically where I want to go, but yet I'm actually feared if I can do like all of it like in a time span. So then to ease myself, I started like going out from Milan to, let's say, Lake Como and doing a small trek on the mountain and then coming back. But yet I was so much exhausted. So I actually don't know when to start it and if I'm going to sustain it for real. I know I am physically fit, I can do it, I can bear it, but the fear of adapting this new place, I don't know. It's a little bit a risk-reward thing, which I am fearing, and I am not sure when to start or how to start. So I wanted to ask that. I am trying to ease myself by doing these micro-adventures, but I don't know if I'm ready to do the whole Dolomite trip.
Well, I think you're going about it the right way. I mean, by dipping your toe in and going on shorter, sharper trips, I think it builds up that experience level. And each day you're in Italy, if you're interacting with the public, then you're working on your ability to communicate in that language, and you're going to get more and more comfortable. Give you another 3 weeks, you're going to be better than where you are right now. It's the same with any adventure. You go out there and start hiking, and then Heather could probably jump in here as well. I mean, like you start off on a trip, you always go generally fairly slow. You give yourself the grace that you have to build into it. Your capabilities a month in, or no, even 2 days in versus where you were at the start. And then a week later, you're going to have so much more capability. You grow as you go on these trips. So be gentle to yourself, like in the fact that, I need to be 100% ready at the very, very start. I need to be the most physically fit. You can take the approach sometimes as long as you've got the skills, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to slowly ease into this journey and let myself grow into it. And I think sometimes that really helps. John Muir, a guy who was walking across Australia, the only person to have, in European known history, to have walked across Australia unsupported, hunting, gathering, living off the land. He started off the trip doing 4 kilometre to 5 kilometre days. That's nothing, like 2-3 miles. And he gradually built up until at the end he's, doing some crazy distances. Yeah, so be gentle with yourself. But yeah, you're doing the right thing by doing these little smaller trips. I think it really makes sense.
I'm still thinking like I need to seek that motivation because most of my trips that I made in India, for instance, I don't have a place to sleep. I can talk my way. Here in a different country with different language and everything, here it's different. You cannot expect that, okay, you might ask a random person for some help and they might help. It's not the same everywhere. So that actually fears me to start, that's what concerns me because I cannot put a tent anywhere.
Yeah, I think planning is going to be your answer there. Planning, proper planning there will really help. I think any execution of any dream, idea, goal, it's 90% in the planning stage. So if you're able to, through Google or through talking to people before you actually go on the trip, finding out the places that you can camp, finding out the populated areas, having phone numbers in case you get in trouble in certain areas of people that are in the area that will be able to aid assistance, the local mountain guides, the local police groups, having that all planned out beforehand means that when you go off on the trip, you don't feel that sense of dread that, oh, geez, I've left the stove running back at home, there's something could go wrong. It really, really helps. So that also helps with motivation, knowing that you've done the right preparation is you feel confident. Preparation equals confidence.
Heather, I mean, you've done an incredible trek there, and I think we can probably learn quite a bit from that. I mean, maybe both counts. One is, to Jonesy's point, did you find that as the journey got on, you became better and your performance was better and you improved physically? Secondly, how did you gain motivation leading up to it, which I think might be one of Shanky's sort of questions. How did you gain motivation? Was it around a particular plan? How many boxes did you need to tick before you were happy to take that first step?
I guess firstly, there's a concept called trail fitness, and it is 100% real. You get so fit when you're actually out there on your trip doing it all day, every day. My first day on the PCT, I hiked 17 kilometres, and by the end of it, I was doing 50-kilometre days back to back. I never ever even thought that was possible for me, and I like to think that I'm actually quite a slow-paced hiker, but you gain so much more strength because you are literally doing it and training and practicing every single day once you're out there. And as for the planning side of things, I'm actually an event manager, so I can't help myself. I freaking love planning. So I didn't waste any time with that process, and I went through all of the maps for the whole trail. That's over 4,000 kilometres worth of maps that I looked at. Firstly, I planned out how long I was going to take. So I said, okay, you know what, 4,000 kilometres, let's divide that by an average of maybe 30-kilometre days. Excellent. That gives me 175 days that I've got to expect my trip to be in. And then I knew from there, okay, I'm going to start a little bit slower so I can go under 30 kilometres. And because I'm doing that on the other end of halfway, I need to be doing more than 30 kilometres each day. And that's kind of how I figured out what my comfortable middle ground was as far as mileage per day. And yeah, I literally just went through and I said, okay, roughly every 30 kilometres, I'm looking for somewhere to pitch a tent. Luckily for me, that's a trail that has just endless camping options. And the point was that then gave me the confidence to realise that, okay, like at least every 30 kilometres, there's somewhere I can stop, figure it out once I get out there. And once you get out there, it's much easier once you're actually in the moment and actually doing it as well. And you kind of, whenever you find yourself in a situation, you're like, okay, it's going to be actually quite a long day. You know it, and you realise that you have all this information behind you, and it gives you so much more confidence to just dig deep and smash out that bigger day if you need to. Or Jonesy, how did you prep for your paddle trip?
When we came up with the idea to paddle across the Tasman Sea, this is something that's a little less known, is that Cass and I, the bloke I did that trip with, we had never paddled offshore when we came up with that plan and that idea. So it's just like our eyes were too big for our bodies, but there's something really cool about immersing yourself into a new skill. What we did to train for the Tasman journey is every Sunday for a good year and a half, 2 years, we'd paddle Manly to Palm Beach and back, which is a 52-kilometre paddle. But it's more like time on water to experience different situations, experience what it's like to be in driving wet rain, in strong winds paddling against it, in areas where there's really strong currents so that you know how hard it can be. And also getting comfortable in certain wave conditions, because something that I know, for example, I'm still fairly uncomfortable. I hate a three-quartering sea behind me when it's coming from an odd angle and it sloughs the tail of your kayak around and you can't really ride it that well. So the more time you do on water there, the better, because you get more comfortable. And if you come up across a situation in the Cook Strait where it's a little bit hairy, you're going to feel so much better.
How do you plan the whole big trips like that? Hourly basis, or do you just leave it to your fate that, okay, day 1, day 2, day 3, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and like that?
I think it's good with bigger trips is to break them down in stages. So you think about what are the natural stages for your journey. So I haven't done too much research on sort of like walking the length of the Dolomites, but like looking at the length of it, there might be certain, like you might look at the route of it and there might be certain obvious stages. And that might be, all right, from start point to getting up to this pass, where that's the first major hurdle we have to get to. Or there might be chokehold points, or there might be certain places you have to stay. Break it up into different stages. Don't necessarily think about by hour. I think you can get numb by that kind of detail. That can be too much. There are going to be times where you probably have to think about that. If you're doing an ultra alpine, that means really early start to get through a dangerous area, if you're doing it in, say, winter, for example. But yeah, just break it down into chunks that make sense. So look at the natural points where there might be a hut. So that's a good way to do it. Look at a day. Or you might look at point to point. So from where I get through, point A to pass this pass. High points, yeah, whatever makes sense. The Antarctic trip, for example, it was 2,285 kilometres. We didn't think about it every single day. We thought about it and broke it down into every degree of latitude. And what that means is that it breaks it down to roughly 112 kilometres each chunk. And so we thought about that as a stage, and then the next stage, and the next stage. All you have to do is show up every single day with the right game plan for that stage.
Do you plan your backups? Like, what are you going to do in the worst conditions? Do you plan your backups? Do you have backups?
100%. Like, I think especially you look at the severity of what happens if something goes wrong. And so you, on the Tasman, using a really pointy end example, talking about everything from like, what if someone dies? What if someone on the kayak dies? What if we break a leg? What if someone gets a skull injury? What if someone's chronically seasick for 6 days and is vomiting the entire time? How do we get around that? What if one of our family members back home dies? Do we actually want to know about it? What if a 9/11 style event happened back in the world? Do we want to find out about that? Because it's going to change our state of mind. So for everything that you think is of severe importance, you have an actions on document. You list out all the things that could possibly happen, put down the probability of those things happening, because this will help your engineering mind, and then what the steps are that you need to take in those situations. And what's powerful is you can share that document with other people, and it shows that your plan, your research, but it also shows that, you know, they can see if it is a dangerous thing you're doing. They can see when you're deviating from the plan that you said you were going to do. And if that's the case, then they can go pull you up on it and go, hey, look, you're not being safe now. This is not the parameters that you set before. So you've got to be careful at this point. I just thought I'd share my background just for a second, the process for going on an adventure, really. Like you start off the start, which you've got the stimuli to go on a trip. And sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external, like disruption. But you've got a dream, you commit to an idea, and then you plan and trial everything. And that's like a rotating sort of cycle that you go in until finally you feel ready and you dive in. You've got to dive in head first into that expedition, in the deep end, and just go. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. There's going to be moments where you're just surviving because it's going to be rough. It's like Heather, when she first started walking, she was only doing the 17 kilometers. John Muir was only doing 4 kilometers at the start of his trip. But then you adapt to these situations. It's a balance of adaptation and survival until you reach your new stage where you're knocking out 50 kilometers a day. And then you get comfortable, and then that cycle starts all over again for the next expedition. So that's something I just thought I'd share very briefly. It's something that I kind of use to help me with visualizing an expedition.
Things in life you have to do on your own with other people's that are not always your family, because they have their own lives, right?
Sure.
And then I think this Zoom meeting made me think, okay, I need to be more loose. I have to think a little bit, and I am going to do this, and I will find people that are going to do this with me because my family supports me. They are already helped me to do research and everything. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I can't stay with everyone, even though I want it. And not always I can do this. So I have to find a group or find one person that wants to go with me. And if no one, I can do it on my own.
Of course you can.
And yeah, and I worried a lot about, oh my God, I'm going to be in somewhere I've never been in my whole life. And I'm scared because people, you know, how am I going to talk to people and say, hi, my name is Karina, I'm from Brazil. And, oh, tell me about your culture, you know.
I think that's a great way to start.
So different. Yeah.
Yep. So, Jonesy, thank you. I've put your website in the comments. Jonesy's also shared, dozens of incredible links. So please check out those resources.
Thank you so much, Sab.
Thank
you, Jones.
Thanks, Jonesy.
Guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.